Good morning. Welcome to Her Laundry Unfolded. I'm Wendy Babcock, and this morning my guest is local to me, Sarah Wetley. Good morning, Sarah.
Good morning.
I'm excited to have you on here today, especially because it's mostly, I think, locals at this point that kind of follow me, so this is great.
Yeah, it's exciting. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so as always, I like to just jump right in, so I'll have you just introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about who you are.
Awesome. Well, I'm Sarah. I have been in this area for 9 years now. I'm originally from Milwaukee, so not too far. I'm a business owner. I'm a mom with 4 kids, and yeah, pretty excited to be where I am right now in my life.
Yeah, so I imagine 4 kids, that in itself sounds like a challenge. I
Yes.
have I have two, and that was so doubling that. So let's go back a bit. So I know, like, when you applied to be on the show, of course, going back even probably before your 20s, what did that look like? Like coming into that and
Yeah, well, I had, I guess, a different childhood. I was homeschooled, and my father was a minister, so it was I think it was very fun. It was really great having those experiences. I lived in inner city Milwaukee, so that in itself was very different from where I live now.
right,
Um, and yeah, when I turned 18, I got married, and it was a very abusive relationship. Had my first child from that marriage. Thankfully, I wised up and I was divorced by the time I was 21. Um, and so that was pretty difficult, being a single mom with one child.
right.
And then I got married again when I was 24, had my daughter, and I was divorced again before I was like close to 25.
Wow. So just in that alone, I mean, finding the courage to leave those situations and get divorced, that's a huge challenge. And then to go right again and get married and have another little one, and now you've got two little ones,
Yeah.
and on your own, what was life like then for you?
It was very hard. I think the courage to leave the first relationship, the first marriage was difficult. Then my second husband kind of took advantage of that um, trauma and,
Mm-hmm.
said the right things and was going to be there and all that. Then to find out is I'm back where I started again, back with an abusive person who was an alcoholic. It was very difficult added with living in the inner city of Milwaukee. I live in a really horrible area. Um,
Wow.
it was, I mean, when you say horrible, yeah, there was a murder on our street. Like it was just,
Wow.
it was very difficult. So being a mom in that area, and it was always something to, you trust God, but it was still hard at the same time.
Well, I can imagine. I mean, it's just about your personal safety, and now you've
Yeah,
got little ones. You're on your own.
yeah.
Um, I can't even imagine that. And I'm assuming, were you working at that time, or were you?
Yes. So interesting enough, I actually worked. I also at one point owned my own business. I owned a daycare.
Wow.
Yeah, in the inner city of Milwaukee. So I employed my sister and my mom, and I had my two little girls. And so I had my own daycare, and I did that for probably close to 2 years, until it just wasn't financially stable enough. So then I
Right.
went to working a full-time job at a auto repair shop, being a service writer. So leaving when the
Oh,
sun
wow.
comes up, coming home when the sun goes down.
And what a change of pace too, between
Yeah.
taking care of your own kids and someone else's to leaving the home and having somebody else take care of your kids, I imagine.
It was really crazy. Just it's really it's difficult and sad when someone else basically has to raise your children because you have
Right.
to be financially they're dependent on you.
Right. And then that's just hard for you to leave the house, especially when you're used to that already, homeschooling your kids and
Yes,
being able to be there for them. So that was a big change for them as well, I can imagine.
very much so. It was very nice that I had my family. My mother would come over and watch my girls, and I was super blessed to have that extended family to do that during that
Mhm.
time.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you had a pretty supportive family, which definitely helps a lot.
Very much. I was very blessed in that. Yes.
That's awesome. So I imagine mindset wise, I can imagine going through all these different challenges between, the first marriage and a kid and a divorce, another kid, another marriage and divorce. having that support, a lot of women don't have. So, I mean, that's a huge thing to have.
It is. It is. I think I always feel when you're a single mom, and in my case, I was completely single mom. The fathers were never in the picture ever.
Wow.
So it is very, it is your job, and you take that upon yourself. And I think a lot of
Mhm.
times we don't realize how much help we do need, and how mentally draining it can be being the mom and the dad.
Yeah,
You
because
might not say it. You don't want to say it, but it is.
uh-huh. It's a lot. And then now you're working outside the house and you're not getting that quality time and you're trying to do
Yes.
all the different roles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think that kind of hit me one day. My mom said I was helping with my first daughter, Hannah, and she was 3 or so at the time. And I
Mhm.
was helping on the weekend. And my mom said, oh, she doesn't like this or she doesn't like that. And it was like, oh my gosh, like it kind of hit me that I really didn't know what my child liked and didn't like, because I
Right.
wasn't the primary caregiver, because I would
Oh,
be gone 12 hours a day working. So,
wow. And then that kind of hits you right in the heartstrings too, because you want to be there for all those things. And,
yes.
to hear that, oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And then, so you said your dad was a minister.
Yes.
So how has that played in your life too? Because that's, there's a lot of stigmas around that.
Oh yes, he was an amazing person. He started his ministry in the 1960s.
Okay.
He was born in 1930, so we were kind of the
Okay.
younger batch of children. Um,
Okay.
it is interesting growing up being a pastor's family, because you realize it, but you're not completely included in a lot
Hmm.
of things, because you're kind of, no one wants to like hang loose around the minister's family, I think.
Right.
Um, and so that, and also being homeschooled, you're just kind of
Oh,
you're kind of different.
right.
But it really has played a huge part in one, overcoming the obstacles that I did, having
Yeah.
that foundation of knowing no matter how hard things are, that God is there, and he always is there. And my father was a huge part in me overcoming a lot of the obstacles in my life.
Oh, I bet that's a huge foundation that he laid for you just in that, knowing
Yes.
God's there to get you through things. Even when I'm sure there was times when you felt probably hopeless.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that was the hugest things. I you see people around you fall into really dark things, going through
Hmm.
difficulties. And not that I didn't have my share of hard times, but I think always having that foundation of knowing that God's there kept me from making probably some worse choices than I could have made.
Absolutely. Wow. So after your second divorce, then, where were you at in your life at that point? Besides, obviously living in the inner city of Milwaukee by yourself, and now you're working full time. What does your life start to look like then?
Once I separated from my second husband, it was very difficult, because now I'm looking like, oh, here I am again, now with a second child, completely on my own.
Right.
It was very difficult because I actually had protective orders from my ex-husbands, and for my children. So completely they were out of the picture, and to the point of I had to kind of protect them from their
Right.
father. And that was huge. And I think that was emotionally draining also, because not only did I had to financially take care of them, I had to make sure that they were safe from them. And that was
Right.
very difficult. Like I said, living in the inner city, I mean, in Milwaukee is a tough place. Where I lived was a tough place. Um, you hear gunshots, you call the police, and no one was going to come, because it was just Milwaukee. The crime rate's so high. Um, you kind of were on your own, and
Wow.
that was very scary, but became normal.
Wow. How unsettling, though, to think about that. I mean, being afraid for yourself is one thing, but being afraid for your children and hearing those gunshots, I've been fortunate. I never lived in that situation, but that sounds awful.
Oh yeah, there was a couple of times that someone actually, I think, were trying to get into my home. And I called the police, and the police didn't get there till like an hour later. So it makes you you trust God, but it makes you very aware that your safety is in your hands, and you have to really be aware of everything when you're in that kind of situation.
Wow. And so having those protective orders, did you run into problems with like your ex's like friends and family in that area?
So I tried really hard to separate myself. My first husband gave me no issues whatsoever. Thank
Good.
God, it was great. My second husband, on the other hand, he was very difficult. His family didn't like me, of course, because of all of that. There was one time that I was nice and brought Bella to come meet, and he actually didn't listen to the order. He actually threatened me, and that
Wow.
was very traumatizing because we actually went to court for that because I wanted to get it extended. And the prosecutor was amazing. They really fought, but ultimately my case was dismissed. And
Wow.
that is very difficult. And that was kind of one of the times where you think about the justice system, and it gets it right a lot of times, but it's a little frustrating, and it's hard when it doesn't get it right sometimes.
Right. And not feeling protected for
Yeah.
you and your children. I
Absolutely.
mean, when it kind of works against you in a way.
Yeah.
Wow. So where do you go from there then as you're working and stuff? How long do you work, at the automotive place? And
Yep, I worked there for probably I think a couple years, in which transitioned into meeting Kevin, my now
okay.
husband,
Okay.
who it was pretty amazing because when I met him, we just started chit-chatting, and my marriage orders were I can't move outside of 200 miles from Milwaukee. That's
Oh
just
wow.
pretty standard in most
Yeah.
places. And he lived 159 miles from Milwaukee. Like, exactly.
Wow.
So that was pretty, I'm like, okay, God, I get it.
Uh-huh. It's within those limits though.
It's right
So
there.
it's
Yep,
fine.
it's fine.
Wow. So how did you meet then? So was it like online or did you?
Yep, it was actually online. So it was like
Oh, cool.
it was called Moco Space. I don't even know if it's around anymore. It was
Okay.
basically almost like a Facebook for like a cell phone. So it wasn't a dating app or anything. So
Oh wow, that's awesome. And I actually have a cousin who met his wife on Plenty of Fish, and they're so happy. So you just never
yeah,
know how you're going to meet somebody.
definitely. And it's so funny in this day and age because 10 years ago it was really like, what? And
Right.
now it's a little more normal, but I always say, it's kind of interesting because you can meet someone out and about, but when you meet someone online, usually you do a lot of conversation and you really get to know the person even before you
Yeah.
meet them.
Well, and for you, that had to feel a little bit more secure because you could really kind of deep dive into who is this person,
Oh,
you
yes.
know, especially kind of watch for those red flags, which I'm sure you're probably on
Yes.
high alert at that point.
Oh, absolutely. I always tell Kevin, he was close because at the moment when I actually started talking to him, it was just friendship. We had actually talked for probably 5 months before we even had a date.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and I actually told him, I said, you're this close, because I really was done with dating. After my second husband, I was just happy working and doing what I had to do. So I had no interest in dating. I always joke with him, you just slipped in there, dude. You just made it in there.
Right. That's awesome. So, then obviously you move, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
when was that and how did all that go?
So our first date was Isabel had actually on her birthday, so October 14th, we had met, and the following year, so May of the following year, because we both spoke, and it made more sense for me to move. Kevin, he's on the fire department. He had,
Yeah.
at the time, pretty much almost his own business. And I didn't want to raise my children in Milwaukee. And that was
Right.
something I always kind of wanted not to happen. So
Right.
by May of the next year, I had moved here.
Oh, wow. And that had to be kind of a shock for you too, because our community is much smaller
Yeah.
than Milwaukee. I mean, and it's a different demographic of people, everything.
Very much so. I think that it was different. I enjoyed it. But I think for me, I adjusted quite well for a couple different reasons. One, my father's from a little town in Mississippi. We visited many times. So I was used to a small town environment. I knew what it was.
Okay.
And as a child, I always told my dad, I'm like, I wish we could move. I enjoyed a smaller town atmosphere. And then, of course, being in a biracial family itself, coming to a different community with a different demographic of people, it wasn't something that was foreign to me.
Right, right. And plus it kind of helped. Kevin was kind of pretty well known in the community anyways, being on the fire
Yes.
department. And, I had met Kevin back in my high school days.
Yes. Oh
So
yeah.
that kind of helps too.
Oh yeah, everyone's wonderful. I mean, people, New Lisbon is people are just really wonderfully nice in this town.
Yeah, that is awesome. So, okay, so you move here, and obviously, eventually, you guys get married. And
Yep.
what is life like in small town now with Mr. Kevin?
Well, it's wonderful in a lot of different ways. We had our son Wyatt shortly after we were married, and I stayed home for those 4 years. So then after that, I decided to do nails, and it's very fun in the fact that you develop long relationships with people because
Right.
people stay. You know people, and then you know their children,
Yeah.
which is how Kevin grew up and was born and raised here. So he
Right.
has so many connections, so many ties, and it is very nice to see that. And of course, living in a big city, you don't have that.
Right.
So it is really wonderful as far as even when I start talking to you, Wendy, he's like, oh, I know Wendy.
Yep.
So
That's
that's really
funny.
fun.
Yeah, everyone knows it. And that's why I think it's kind of funny when, you get somebody who wants to talk about somebody else. You're like, you know how small of a town this is? We kind of
Absolutely.
know each other.
Yes, and that is very funny. That's so true because it's very true. I haven't never been a huge gossiper because it's very true. You don't know, and
Yeah.
everyone is so connected with each other, and it's so funny
Hmm.
too. I work with nails and my salon, and I'll have people come in. I'll listen to everyone talk, and sometimes I'm like, you just never know who might know someone.
Yeah, and I was one when I was very young. I was probably 19 years old. Put my foot right in my mouth. I was with a coworker. I was waiting tables, and she was a much older lady. I think she was probably in her, well, I want to say older, but yeah, she was probably in her late 50s. And we were watching TV, and on came about somebody who had been from the community I grew up in. He's being released from prison, and he was in prison for raping one of my good friends.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so I made the comment that I just couldn't believe it. He was just, this most awful person. I'm going on and on about him.
Yeah.
And she turns to me and goes, "That's my brother."
Oh.
I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" She said, "Well, we've disowned him," but I just felt like, I'm like, oh, so now I've just always watched what I say because you don't know.
It's so true. You really, it is very interesting, and I've seen that a lot of times, and it's interesting for me because I have no really ties, so I'm on the outside, and I think
Hmm.
and it's not bad or good, but I think when
Right.
you're not from a town, even born, you kind of are always kind of on the outer curb, so you kind of
Right.
sit back and you kind of watch all these relationships and you hear about all these different things. You're like, oh, okay,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. So, obviously you got settled, you're having kids, and, what are you doing then for work? Like, how did you get into your current business then?
Yes. So for 4 years, I stayed at home. My husband was amazing in the fact of I had Isabel at the time. She was 1. So Hannah was already in school. And he was just like, you know what? I would prefer you stay home with the little ones as they're young. And that was one of the gifts that I don't think he'll ever completely understand how wonderful it was to give me to be able to be home for 4 years with them as they were transitioning from babies to toddlers and not having to put them in daycare. That was wonderful. So
Yeah.
I did that. And once Wyatt started to go to pre-K, I said, well, I've been home for 4 years. I'm kind of looking forward to getting out of the house. And we wanted to find something I could do that was flexible. With Kevin being on the fire department
Hmm.
and his business, he owns a business. He can't get away. He can't sometimes maybe possibly pick up a kid from school. He just can't do it.
Right.
So I wanted something that I could have a flexible schedule. And that's why I decided to do nails and have my own salon. So I would be able to make my own hours to still be there for the kids.
Right. And I can imagine what a blessing that was, especially when you came from working 12 hours and having someone else take care of the kids. So that had to
Yes.
be just, I mean, I went from that too, from working full time to be able to, work from home. And
Yeah.
that is such a huge thing for the kids.
It's huge. It was
Yeah.
huge. It was great. It's even just having those memories. It's
Mhm.
just I'm super. I always tell him he'll never know how grateful I was for that.
Right. So how did it even transpire with the nails? Like, how did you even get interested in, like, how did that even present itself to you?
So I started with I never really got my nails done until I moved up here. And there's a salon in Boston, which is also a school. And it was so nice to go to a salon and be able to actually talk and have a conversation with your nail technician. And it was really a nice experience, which I really hadn't experienced in Milwaukee with salons there. And so she's like, well, Sarah, if you, her name's Kelly, the owner, and she's like, it'd be great if you want to do this. And I talked to Kevin, and he's like, that would be fine. So it went from me barely could be able to paint my own nails, because I was horrible. You'll ask Kevin, he's like, you were horrible.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was bad. Like, the stories. I would paint my nails, and he's like, that's on your skin. I'm like, it'll wash off. Like, that's how bad it was.
Oh my gosh.
I went to school, and after I went to school, the opportunity came up to open my own nail salon. And yeah, that's kind of how it happened.
What a crazy transition from not being able to paint your own and to getting your nails done. And Kelly at Ally Rose is amazing. Everybody loves her. I just love her. She's got such a great personality, and I could see how she could kind of lure you in there, like, hey, you should do some nails.
Oh yeah, I remember. I started going there when I was pregnant with Wyatt, and it was always fun because she's a fun person. It's a fun experience going to Ally Rose.
Yeah, I started going there too to get mine done, because my daughter was going there. And, oh my gosh, I look forward just to having conversations.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a hoot. So of course you're going to school there, and so then there's a lot to do with starting a business, though. Like going through the schooling and all that, but then starting a business, that's a different story. So
I had under my belt the fact that I had owned a business before Milwaukee.
Right.
I had under my belt, my father was a business owner. So growing up, I was in our family of family businesses and seeing how that worked. So I had that, and that was huge.
Awesome.
So that really helped. Also, just having the drive to want to have something of your own and to excel. And I think that's what a lot of business owners have in their mind, that they want to excel, and they really want to do. Sometimes when you're employed, you can only go so far.
Right.
And that's how it is, and it's understandable, and that's just how it works in life.
Right.
But I really wanted to excel, and I wanted to do things my way in a certain, I guess, way to say it.
Right.
And so it was very difficult starting out, just dealing with all the state stuff, just getting clients. It's definitely, and I started my business probably a month after I graduated.
Wow.
Yes, it was fast. It was quick. It was really quick. So navigating your art of doing nails, figuring out what stuff works, what stuff doesn't. Your skills aren't the greatest. So shout out to all my clients that have been with me for the last 2 years from the beginning. You guys are awesome.
That's amazing, though. I mean, because that takes a lot of confidence and a lot of legwork. I mean, being a mom and stuff, and juggling all of that and starting this business. I mean, like you said, there's, health codes, there's all these different tax regulations and whatnot. And so how do you go about even, finding a location? That's got to be difficult too.
Yes. Well, and it was kind of interesting how when we Silver Star Health reached out to Kelly, and that was our initial location.
Okay.
And how that worked out. And then from there, we just kind of started to grow, and it really, it was really amazing, the fact that we really weren't able to advertise inside Silver Star. So it was me and Courtney, we were our separate businesses, but we worked together. Right. And it was amazing how our hard work really paid off as far as getting clients, because we really didn't have great location, here's a sign and all this. No, we were kind of in the back, in the corner. So yeah, we were able to start there, and then we started out there, and now we're in our location where we are now. And it's just, it's amazing when you work really hard and you build those relationships. I mean, I've come in late, I've come in early, I've done nail fixes for certain people, which just never ending. But that care and concern, it really pays off when you really strive for that.
Right. And so how did you and Courtney then kind of get together? Was she doing the schooling the same time you were?
She was doing schooling the same time, yes.
Okay.
So then we were like, well, two are better than one. So we both decided, well, we'll work together. Each of it is our own business.
Right.
But to be able to offer more than one tech there. So in case I couldn't do someone or she couldn't, there would be someone else there. to be able to work with.
Right. It's probably more feasible when you're renting a space to work out of as well, or purchasing, whichever.
Absolutely.
Splitting it instead of having all that burden on yourself.
Absolutely. There were, I mean, it's never easy. I mean, there are
Mm-hmm.
many months that we worked, you didn't have any clients, you still have your overhead, including
Right.
the quarantine, you know,
Oh,
months
yeah.
of no income, but you still have to pay those bills. Bills don't stop.
Right. So yeah, talk a little bit about this year, how this has been a challenge for you guys, because I know that I've watched it all over social media of people really struggling.
Yeah. So basically, it was kind of crazy because we started in a smaller spot. And
Mm-hmm.
once, of course, we had no idea, we moved to our larger spot in the same building in
Mm-hmm.
January. And so, yeah, like right when everything started happening.
I didn't even realize it was that close to the start of the pandemic. And for some
It,
reason, I had you guys in there a little longer, but
no,
January, that's like,
January, it was crazy. So we were just
wow.
like, okay, what are we going to do? So
Yeah.
we worked until the state shut us down. And from there, we just sat, and that was very difficult for us because our outgoing expenses doubled,
Oh my
and we did not, because at that time my kids were going to school.
God. Mm-hmm.
I was working full time, probably more than full time, and we're like, oh, more bills, that'll be fine, it's
Yeah.
really fine. So once that happened, it was pretty crushing in the fact of, again, not being able to work. And then once we were able to open back up, I probably, just due to I had a lot of older clients that no
Mm-hmm.
longer come to me. You have a lot of people that are now, either working from home and not working. So a lot of people's situations have changed.
Right.
So I went from working full time, basically not being able to get everyone in, to my clientele probably dropped by more than half.
Wow. Yeah, because
And
it's not just a matter of, oh, yeah, you can open up. You have to have the clientele being able to come in. And for one, they're in probably financial hardships as well, where
yeah,
they're thinking, okay, well, my meals maybe aren't my priority. Maybe I need to be able to. So, and especially the older ones, they're worried
yes,
about COVID and all
yep.
that. And no matter how much you protect yourselves and them, it's still kind of scary for people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's
Wow.
why, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
So when we started back, my children, so that segues into my children, because my
Right.
children had been home because there was no school.
Mm-hmm.
And then we went summer, so now no school in summer.
Oh, gosh.
And so then once school started back, I was planning on sending my kids, and that was the plan, and that's what we were doing. And once the mask mandate came into effect,
Mm-hmm.
I made the decision, me and Kevin, that our children going to school wearing a mask wasn't acceptable.
Right.
There are many reasons. I mean, just for the fact of my daughter, sometimes she has difficulties learning in some avenues, and that would have been just really not helpful for her. So we made the decision that then I would stay home and homeschool them.
Wow.
Like, not just during this time, but just indefinitely.
Wow. So, and for most people, I mean, that's a huge challenge then, especially when you're running a business and now to homeschool full time. But of course, you grew up being homeschooled, so that helps a bit, but doesn't make it easy.
Yes, it does help a bit. It was very interesting because it's very interesting as parents. Sometimes I feel like we're told, well, you can't. I mean, teachers have to go to school. They have to go to school and get this certificate, and they work which my mother's a teacher. She actually works in Milwaukee public schools. So teachers are amazing.
Yes.
I just can't, they're priceless in so many avenues. But I also think in our society, a lot of times parents are made to feel like they're just not capable of teaching their children.
Right.
And so even as a mother who was homeschooled, I was homeschooled kindergarten through high school. I still felt inadequate during quarantine. Wow. And so I made the decision to use my own curriculum, not to use virtual or anything like that. And it's been in transition. It's been difficult. I work 1 day a week now.
Okay.
So that definitely has changed a lot. But I can say that I've seen a huge change in my children. My children had a lot of different hardships being in school with peers and certain things that just shouldn't have been allowed in school atmosphere.
Oh, wow.
And they're doing really well. And it's really wonderful to be able to have that option. And I'm very grateful and blessed that my husband has made it that I can do that, and that I can still do my business also on a limited scale.
Right. It's remarkable, just sitting here, because even though I know you a bit, from out meeting you in person and stuff, but what's remarkable to me is hearing your story, and you're a very positive person. You're very upbeat. Like, I don't hear you like, oh, I went through all of this. And, you're very optimistic. I find that very refreshing.
Well, I think it's wonderful. And I think that was kind of, I have to say my father, our family was a huge part of that, because bringing, again, we were in the inner city of Milwaukee. We were a minister's family. We were also conservative. And that was huge, a huge part too. And because you're growing, oh, that's my child sending me something to look at, of course.
It's great.
Growing up, majority of minorities are liberal or Democratic voters, and our family grew up conservative, and it was difficult. I mean, there was many times my father would have conversations with family members, and it was kind of like this debate going on. But I feel like, so in just a lot of ways, the conservative mindset is that you work hard and you reach out for that American dream, and you don't need necessarily help. You have the tools, you can do it. And that ideal, and my father, who grew up in dirt poor Mississippi in the 1930s, he did not have running water. They did not have bathrooms in their home. So growing up and knowing that, and being instilled God and love of family, you can always be negative about your past and things that are hard, but it's not going to necessarily help you move forward.
Right. And I love that mindset. I think that's just, a beautiful way to grow up and have that. I think that's just amazing. Even though, of course, people's views, of course, always become a challenge, of course, especially, if you're in a smaller community and stuff too, and there's lots of different opinions. And so I can see, especially in inner city Milwaukee, where being, a woman of color and being conservative, where that might raise some eyebrows and somebody might say, well, what?
Well, it's actually really funny because, I, as a woman that is conservative, you go through a lot of different life experiences. I've had experiences as a woman, I've experienced as a woman of color, and I've probably had the most difficult interaction and the most negativity put on me for being conservative. Wow. And that was really hard to fathom at one point, because it's like, I'm a good person. I want to help people, and I feel like people and it was just, I never, even if I disagree, it doesn't change how I feel you as a person. It won't change my love for you. It won't change my care. But over the past 4 years and even longer, I've seen a lot of negativity and a lot toward me. Someone even told my husband at one time that, because he was having a political kind of discussion, and he's like, well, my wife is Black, and her family, they have conservative views, and they literally said to him, yeah, your half Black wife, she doesn't have a right to have views. And
what?
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot. And it's kind of crazy, but I've had that so many times. I've had people literally tell me that I shouldn't talk. And it is amazing because it's like, I think I'm a valuable person as far as experiences. I lived in the inner city. I know what maybe Democratic policies do to a city and minorities. I lived it. I was there. I have family that are still living in it. So it is very interesting to see, because of your views, that you can be devalued.
Oh yeah, and I've seen it all over social media, and it's literally heartbreaking.
It is.
And it's and a lot of some of the people around me, even even though I don't come from Wisconsin, I came from Illinois, but we were in a suburb. So it's not like I have people, I'm from Chicago. I'm not from Chicago. I'm from a suburb. That's a whole different demographic, a whole different life. So when people haven't lived the life and they want their opinion to be heard loudest, that's really hard for me to take it. I would rather talk to somebody like yourself who have lived the life, who have seen the challenges. You've gone through a lot of stuff, in that inner city, and you held on to your values and your views. You're obviously a very good person. You've built a business. I mean, isn't that what the American dream is supposed to be about? Is overcoming challenges, building ourselves up, being a good citizen in our communities, and then to be devalued because of your view.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
I think for a long time I didn't talk about my views
Hmm.
because I didn't want backlash, and I
Right.
didn't want, which is really sad. I didn't
It
want to
is.
offend someone, and I'm not speaking in a negative or mean way toward anyone personally. It's like, here's what I've been through, and I kind of actually thought, which was interesting. I thought I would have more people reach out to me that
Right.
did have a maybe. I have many conservatives reach out to me and talk to me. Hey, Sarah, how do you feel about this? What are your views on this?
Right.
Many, and it's been a very wonderful, welcoming conversation. I haven't had one liberal friend do that, and
Wow.
it's very heartbreaking because it's almost like, again, your view isn't mine. I don't want to hear it.
Right. And especially
Yeah.
when they didn't grow up in your shoes, and
Oh,
see, I like to hear people with their, what they grew up like, and, why do you have the view you have? Like,
yes.
I mean, that's a great question for someone to say, okay, so, how are you a conservative? Like, how has that played into your life? And seeing the different things going from inner city to small city or small town, even not even small city,
Yeah.
you know?
But that's exactly it. That's exactly it. And I'm so blessed to have been able to have these life experiences. And I,
Yeah.
as a child, I was probably 5, 6 years old, and I saw someone get stabbed on the streets. I've seen people get
Okay.
shot nearly right in front of me. I
Wow.
lived like extreme spectrums, and
Right.
that has really made it. It's heartbreaking to see the Black community going through what it did. I was there. I went through
Right.
it. And I just wish more people would be open to conversation, and an honest conversation, and not just a surface emotional conversation. I think that
Yeah.
is kind of the key, because emotional conversations are fine, but
Right.
you can learn a lot from someone who actually had different experiences than you.
Well, yeah, and for me, most of the time, I want to know, did you feel like some of your hardships were, racially targeted, or was it because of the neighborhood you were in, or like where would you say that would,
Yeah. I
come in
think
play?
I think that a lot of the hardships in, I'll say Milwaukee, because Milwaukee,
Hmm.
I think a lot of it was it was politician based.
Okay.
It's a Democrat run city, and it's so sad in the minority communities. You know, there's no value on the family. There's no value
Hmm.
in having a father in the home. There's,
Right.
of course, a single mother, it happens. I was a single mother. It
Right.
happens. But when the government will give you more money if you are a single mother, and I've seen it, I've heard it. So
Hmm.
that
It's
wasn't
true.
me. It wasn't me. But I've heard it from many people. Why would I get married? Why would I live like that when I can
Oh
get
yeah.
money from the government? I mean, it is just so sad that I would say a lot of my community, a lot of people, they're willing to just live off crumbs instead of saying, you know what, it's going to be hard for a while, but I am
Hmm.
going to work, and I
Yes.
am going to have something of my own.
Yes, I 100% agree because, I come from domestic abuse as well. And that first tax return I got as a single mom blew my freaking mind. I didn't even know I would to expect that. When I got that, I'm like, what?
Yeah,
Like, what? and
absolutely.
and so yeah, so when that's coming around every year and you're getting this good chunk of money, where's the motivation? Like when Brian and I got married, I'm like, that huge amount of money is going to go away. I'm like, well, we're working, we're full time, we're good, but it's
Yeah.
like, I can see where that's a huge motivator not to. And I know other women that are friends with me who purposefully have not gotten married in long term relationships because they do get that hunk of money.
And that right there, and that's one thing my dad always too, it was huge. The family is so important, and I
Yes.
think that again, I was a single mom because it happened, and you
Hmm.
can't. It happens. It was an abusive
Right.
relationship, and but when you find the right person, and if you have that want to have a stable two-family home,
Hmm.
there's no incentive for you to do it.
Right.
There is nothing. And after decade upon decade upon decade of this mentality being taught in the inner city, in these
Hmm.
communities, these homes, these families not having fathers, not having a strong male teaching these boys how to be men, how to care for a family, wanting to work and take care of a family. It's
Hmm.
devastating. And you see that effects on these children and today. And it's just, I hope that out of anything, even my purpose now in life, I just really hope that I can shed a little bit of light that you don't have to live that way. Yes, you might be born in the inner city. Yes, you might not have the perfect start as far as when it comes to financially being able. But if you strive and want to have something different, you can. You just have
Right.
to want it.
Yeah, because look at the cards life handed you, even, and you weren't like, well, I'm just going to give up, live off the system. This is it for
Yeah,
me. You were like, no, I'm, even though it was difficult to go back to work those 12 hours a day, move,
yeah,
move your kids and everything. And also going back to having the father, a strong male figure in the family, even as a woman, look at when you're speaking, how much of an effect that had on your life and your values,
absolutely.
you
And
know?
that is, I think, very much key. And you don't realize that as at that time when you're younger, as a child, you might not notice it. But it's
Hmm.
very true as you're getting older. And in the same way as if I'm going to have a strong, caring mother in the home, a mother
Right,
that's actually present and
right,
able to have conversations and be there. Those
right,
things are what are so important to help the fabric of a family. And
right.
it's very sad that that's kind of the priority a lot of times now. And
Hmm.
not to say you can't have a career, because I have one and you have one
Yeah,
a lot. But if you choose not to and you just want to stay home with your kids,
yeah.
perfect, and that's another thing that I think has been really crazy too, being kind of almost guilted if you want to be home with your kids. Why
Yeah.
don't you want to be like a 50s mother that don't have a life of your own? I kind of
Yeah.
be making you feel because you don't have worth if
Right.
you don't have this crazy career.
Right.
And it's very sad that in this day and age, even though we say equality, equality, and we should love everyone equally in their choices,
Lift
that's
each
not
other
true.
up.
Yeah, yeah.
Lift other women up.
Lift them up, and that's so true. Lift them up
Right.
in whatever choices that make their life
Yes.
happy. It's not actually executed today.
Right. And that's I see that too. It's like I see people that I know saying, oh, women have voices and we should be lifting each other up. But, oh, you're just you're just a housewife, devaluing that person right then and there, which
Yes.
it's not just a housewife, or you're not just raising. I mean, that's a big job, being home with your kids. My
Yeah.
sister does it. I'll tell you what, I don't know how. I mean,
Yes.
there's days where I can see she's at the brink of like ready to have like a nervous breakdown because it's been homeschooling and everything else
Yeah.
through the pandemic, and she's raising her granddaughters plus her own son, and
Wow.
it's a lot to have on your plate. It's not, when you work outside the home, while yeah, that can be a sacrifice, it's also it gives you a little time away and have adult conversations.
Absolutely. And that's so true. And I think, the where I am right now, the I just have so much regard. Even my mother homeschooled me, my brother and sister,
Hmm.
kindergarten through high school. She was a housewife, and my mother, three-story Victorian house,
Wow.
homemade meals 3 times a day, because my father was from the south and he would bring in just tons of produce for her to like make. And
Wow.
business, he had properties and in the church. And my mother did all of that with such grace and love and strength. And every
Wow.
day that I make choices and I teach my children and I do things, I glean from that. And that is something that I hope so much that mothers and fathers understand, that your worth as a parent and bringing these children to the world is so monumental.
It is huge. I mean, being present in their lives, and look at how much, you hold on to what your parents both have done for you. I
Yes.
mean, to me, that speaks volumes. You're like kind of the perfect example of, hey, this is where life can lead you. And it's not because somebody handed you anything.
Exactly.
You have to have that drive. You were striving to have something of your own.
Absolutely. And I feel like making the choice to be a victor and not a victim is
Mm-hmm.
huge,
Yeah.
because you can say, as far as, like I said, my grandmother was born in 1885. That just
Wow.
shows how large of a gap
Wow.
my family life was. So I grew up hearing stories of racism. I
I
grew up
bet.
here and knowing. And so to be where I am today and to see how fortunate and how far we've come as a country.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, look, you can be a victim. You can say, I didn't get this handed to me. I don't get this opportunity. I
Mm-hmm.
have to live here. You can, I was a person of domestic violence. I could go on. You could go on forever
Mm-hmm.
and say all the negative, but at the end of that whole rant and you get done, where has it gotten you? It's okay not to forget the past, because if you
Right.
don't know history, it will repeat itself.
Right.
But we are blessed. We are such a blessed country. And this country, there are so many other countries that you can't even imagine the hardships of
Right.
every day. And as a people of color, we are so
Mm-hmm.
blessed in our opportunities in this country. And to say, look, this is my past. Let's have better. This is
Right.
what my mother, my father, or whoever went through. I want better for myself and my children. And to say, yep, I'm going to work toward that and sacrifice and not let my past control my future.
Right. Because with each challenge, you develop new strengths and character. So if you focus on the strength it took for you to leave that first marriage,
Yes.
and then again, and not sit and strive. And somebody could have easily said, you know what, I failed. I've been through two marriages and just feel like a complete failure,
Yes.
and then just sit in, sit in that amount of failure instead of saying, you know what, I'm going to lift myself up. I'm going to learn from this. I'm going to move on and I'm going to do better for my kids. It's a
Absolutely.
whole mindset thing that it comes down to.
It's huge. Mindset is huge, because, like what you just said, if I made the choice after my second husband to make the choice to live off the system, to
Right.
sit in my house in Milwaukee, to be like, well, you know what, I give up. I failed. I can't. I would have never met the man who made the choice to take my two daughters as his own.
Right.
He, from the moment I met him, he was the most selfless person and was willing to drive to inner city Milwaukee to come visit us. He was
Wow.
willing to completely take on the financial responsibility of my two daughters, because
Wow.
their actual biological fathers did nothing. And
Wow.
so, like you said, if I made the choice to be like, I failed, you know what, I can't do it, I give up, it is what it is, this is where I live, then I wouldn't have met the most amazing person who
Right.
loves my daughters, and we have made such a great family by working really hard and just wanting to do better every single day.
Right. And look what a great role model you're going to be for, your children. Because they're going to say, look who my mom is and look at my dad, because he's taken them under his wing and now they're his kids. And to me, that's a huge lesson for your kids to look at and say, wow, this is what a dad's supposed to be like. Even if he's not biological, this is what a dad is in a family unit.
Absolutely. And I think it's very interesting, because like even
Mm-hmm.
both of my daughters know, my older daughter understands a little bit more, but my 10-year-old, I've had the conversation many times. You have a biological dad and you have a dad that takes care of you.
Right.
And she literally and she's 10 now, she doesn't care. Like, I'll have the conversation and she's like, okay. And she just like leaves the room. Like, it's so amazing when you love a child and you give them what they need as far as
Mm-hmm.
a home.
Right.
That extra stuff is not important to them.
Because they don't feel like they're missing anything.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly it. So, wow, this has been great. I could sit here and talk to you for another few hours, I'm sure. But so if anyone wants to get in contact with Sarah, obviously, if you want to tell the name of your salon in New Lisbon.
Yep, it's Opal and Amethyst Salon. We're in the corner mall across from Opera House.
Yep, so you can email Sarah at sarahwetley@gmail.com. And of course, like you said, you're always open for conversations. And I love that because I think sometimes people are afraid to have, the hard conversations or ask the questions, like
Yeah,
come up to you and say, how has racism affected your life?
absolutely.
And then if you're going to ask the question, sit and listen to the answer.
Absolutely. And one thing I love so much, and it's so amazing, there's been people that have come to me and just, they'll even ask me about my hair. And they're like, I really love your hair, but, how do you wash? Like, they'll just ask questions and they'll say, well, I was kind of scared to ask because I didn't want to offend you. And that is heartbreaking to me. I have to say, one of the most heartbreaking things that right now is happening is the fear of asking questions out of being pegged that you have some kind of insidious undertone.
Right.
And I love questions, and I've never once, I can't even say that I don't think I've ever had anyone ask me a question and I'd be offended, but they really, really were concerned that they would offend me. And that is very sad. I'm totally open for any kind of question because I just want to, and same for other people. I want to know, I want to learn.
And I think we have to be more open that way with people. If you're curious about something with good intentions, then don't assume the person's going to get offended. And if they do, then apologize and say, hey, how can I ask this question in a better way? Like, how can I say this without coming off as a jerk?
Absolutely. I think our society would just grow. And I think that's where, we should be. We should grow in society. We should grow in learning about different, communities and different ways of life out of not have that fear of being called racist or that new favorite word if you're just curious of a different person.
Right. And I think of people who know you especially and how open and sweet you are that, to think they're going to offend you because you don't strike me as a person who's going to be like easily offended over every little thing.
No, it's fun. It's totally fun. We'll be out and about having fun, whatever. And I'll pop up with some kind of like off the wall joke and they're like, oh my God. I'm like, you guys, you have to laugh. It's funny.
Yeah, I do that too. I mean, I'm a blonde, so I've gone into Starbucks and be like, I'll have the basic girl special, the pumpkin latte. And they look at me, they're like, did you just say that? I'm like, yeah, it's funny. It's funny.
And I hope one day we can get back to like the years of like Richard Pryor and all those comedians that were willing to, you laugh at yourself, you laugh at others, you make others laugh. Right. And not being afraid of offending because quite frankly, the population that gets offended is quite small.
Yeah. And that's the truth of the matter. But those are the ones that are usually the loudest.
Yes.
So that's what's hard. So
absolutely.
This has been awesome. I'm so happy I got to interview you today, Sarah.
Yes, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So again, if anyone wants to get in contact with Sarah, obviously she's open to communication, especially in the way our world is right now. Tomorrow being, election day, there's a lot of stuff being said and done. Reach out to your friends and family, everybody, and talk and have open conversations and, be sincere and be kind about it.
Yes.
But then listen. I think the listening part is where we're falling flat because as Sarah has said, these are my experiences. I have lived through these different things. Listen to what I'm saying to you and why she's a conservative and why she's held her values and her beliefs the way she has. So, well, thanks again, Sarah. We'll be back here next Monday at 11 a.m. So that's all I have for today, everyone. Thank you again, Sarah. And
Thanks for having me.
we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.